I'm coming right at you. I need to escort you to a hospital right now. I'm coming at you. Take me to the hospital.
A Fox News alert, an ATF agent in Chicago fighting for his life at this hour after he was shot in the head while working undercover.
An NBC News alert was feds tapped Trump lawyer Michael Cohen's phones. NBC got the story completely wrong.
They really haven't explained how and why they got it wrong. They just run with it. The threshold is so low for anti-Trump stories.
Special counsel Robert Mueller's threat to subpoena President Trump in the Russia investigation sets up a potentially historic clash.
I don't think this is something that ought to be going on between a prosecutor and counsel for the president.
All eyes are on the possible release of those 3 Americans held in a North Korean labor camp following reports out of South Korea of a breakthrough.
And it is off to the races tomorrow at the Kentucky Derby.
We're going to have 100,000 people here. The horse that is favored to win, the name is Justified. So we're putting our money down.
Anything could happen. Anything could happen. Anything could happen. Anything could happen.
Stephen Brian Cummings on the show. Anything can happen, right?
That's why people watch.
Right.
You never know what's going to happen. You miss a little, you miss a lot. So welcome to the show for this Friday.
And I was thinking yesterday around 1 o'clock, I cannot believe it. It's happening again. Another major story
it was
has
big.
broken. And wait a second, for weeks they've been listening to Michael Cohen's phone calls. They've been wiretapping Michael Cohen.
Are you saying the NBC story that apparently the feds were listening in on the president's private attorney's phone calls? That is a story that should melt a switchboard.
We heard that story, could not believe it. Really? They're listening to his phone calls? Have we come to that point as a country? Well, it turns out they had to make some corrections. That story was fake news.
Right, and you know who picked it up? Rudy Giuliani. This for 4.5 hours we thought was fact because they said they have 2 unnamed reliable sources. He says, we think it's going to turn out to be untrue. It's totally illegal. You can't wiretap a lawyer. You certainly can't wiretap his client, especially when she's the President of the United States. So guess what happens around 5:30 on MSNBC? Chuck Todd gets word he's got to change his format. Here's Tom Winter, the guy who broke the story, correcting the story.
We have a correction via NBC News. Earlier today, NBC News reported that there was a wiretap on the phones of Michael Cohen. But we've got a correction to that now. It's not a wiretap where they're listening into the phone calls. Explain what we reported and what we now know.
And we reported that there was a wiretap on Michael Cohen's phone, meaning that they were able to listen into conversations from phone lines associated with Michael Cohen. Now 3 senior U.S. officials are telling us that this is it was not a wiretap. Instead, it was what is referred to as a pen register. In plain English, that means it's a log of phone calls that were made.
So the big question is, who were those 2 sources that NBC had? I mean, were they did they really believe that they had the information, or were they flat out wrong, or were they just trying to stir the pot? Whatever. Nonetheless, NBC, pretty embarrassed. They don't have a little egg on their face. They got a whole omelet.
Those sources probably just heard they're logging his phone calls, and they probably thought that means wiretapping,
right,
and didn't really know the definition.
I just want to look back at all those times they got the story wrong and it helped the president, if you don't mind. They never have gotten a story wrong to help the president. It's always negative, and they have to walk it back, but the damage has already been done. So I just found the whole thing astounding that it had changed. By the time I hopped on the train, it was one story. I get off the train, it's a totally different story, and we just moved on.
Well, because there seems to be such an appetite for new stuff about how the salacious angles to the Trump presidency. As soon as somebody has something, they run with it. Sometimes it turns out not true. We've seen that a number of times, and yesterday was a day for NBC.
And so yesterday we were also talking to Rudy Giuliani, who's now heading up the president's legal team, as you know, and has not done much up until 2 days ago. And the whole scenario plays out like this. The president, they want to sit down and talk to the president, does the Mueller group.
Right.
And in turn, Rudy goes, maybe for 2 hours, it's a 50-50 chance I'll do it, if that. And we're not going to do it under oath, and we're going to just do some questions. They're going back and forth. They say, well, if you decide not to sit down, I'm going to subpoena you. This is Robert Mueller talking. Mm-hmm. Andrew McCarthy is a former assistant U.S. attorney for Southern District of New York. He says this probe does not have the ability to subpoena the president.
You're dealing with the president, whose job in terms of governance of the country, in terms of national security, is obviously much more consequential. And they should not, at the Justice Department, allow Mueller to even request an interview unless they can show that there's a serious crime, that President Trump is somehow complicit in it, and that President Trump has information that the special counsel can't get from any other source. If they can't show those things, the Justice Department should not allow Mueller even to request an interview.
1-800-ROD Rosenstein, step up and do something. That's what Andy McCarthy's saying.
The president has special protections under Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. It's called the Presidential Privilege Against Prosecution, is what it is known as. The President of the United States, the sitting president, cannot be indicted. He has to be impeached first, and then he can be indicted. So you can't do what is being suggested. I mean, there are legal minds arguing both sides, but it does appear the president, if a subpoena were served, it would wind up in court, and ultimately somebody would say, you know what, you can't do that with the sitting president.
All right, let's talk about something.
Go ahead.
Did you have another?
I just said it's one of the few things Thomas Jefferson and John Adams agreed on when it came to the presidency and protecting it. But it looks like Rod Rosenstein might be sitting on his hands again. Shocker.
All right, well, we know what Kanye has said about the president. He said he loves President Trump. They've been friends for a while. Now there's talk that he's going to be going to the White House to talk about healing the racial divisions in America. And there is the famous pastor out of Cleveland, Pastor Darrell Scott, who's been one of the president's most prominent black allies. He confirmed this. I was watching TMZ, and he was on TMZ in the airport, and he said, yes, Kanye West has been invited to the White House to talk about this issue, and we've also invited Kaepernick.
Apparently, the president wants to host a summit on race to try to heal racial divisions in this country. The president would invite artists and athletes as well. This all came down, the comments that we heard were yesterday during the National Day of Prayer when Darrell Scott said the president is 100% behind this idea.
And you know, Kanye West probably could have put it more artfully, but he was trying to say over the last few days is even if you don't agree with the president, at least don't let people tell you what to think and put you into boxes to say if you're white you vote this way, you're Hispanic you vote this way, you're supposed to think this way. And he's saying open up your mind, let people earn your vote, understand what's holding you back. So I think an open forum is the best way to go, because it isn't about Kanye West. It's about what he's trying to get across is let people earn your vote and, you know what, take responsibility for your life. I think this is an awesome idea. I would hope it would be televised, and I hope not everybody in there agrees with Kanye West or with Darrell Scott. I hope there's people from all sides who can air it out in an intellectual way and maybe move the ball forward. Because right now, all we do is sit in our corners and wait for the next election day to reverse the election to your way of thinking. It's not working.
I agree with you, Brian. Well, Ben Shapiro, conservative, what do we call him, talk show host, activist. Ben Shapiro hosts the Ben Shapiro Show, and he had this to say on Kanye and the importance of speaking out. Listen.
What Kanye did by basically saying, think for yourself, if that's such a threat to the left, it demonstrates how the left has to use identity politics to shut down any real debate. Listen, I don't think that Kanye West ought to be nominated for head of the Heritage Foundation, right? I don't think the guy is spending his off hours reading Frederick Hayek. But what Kanye did say here, which is very simple, is listen, I'm not just a black guy, and I'm not just a Hollywood celebrity. I'm an individual with my own thoughts and feelings. I get to formulate my own logic, and I also get to figure out what I believe. And if everybody else thought like this, then perhaps we ought to be able to have these conversations that we haven't been able to have so far. Good for Kanye West for at least beginning the conversation.
Okay.
Apparently, the president's idea is he wants these artists and athletes and celebrities to vent directly to him.
Do you know what's so interesting? Before the president ran, they had professionals looking at what kind of candidate he would be. And one of his greatest assets was the ratings he got in various things that he's done with minority communities. And Apprentice rated off the charts in Hispanic and African Americans. And they thought, wow, can you imagine a Republican running who has a shot at those communities and now be because of maybe some things with Charlottesville and beyond, some things he's done and some things just by being a Republican, he's been shut off from that. So fundamentally, people liked what made Donald Trump on all walks of life, and maybe he can tap back into that in a
I think this is an effort to try to change that particular narrative. Meanwhile, after the riots that we saw at Berkeley, Berkeley commissioned a study to figure out what went wrong. And, you know, keep in mind, conservative speakers invited on, and then there was violence that broke out. Berkeley has come up with figuring out what the problem was. And the problem was so simple. They blamed the violence on the conservative speakers because they were trying to incite the far left to violence and make the university look bad.
Listen to this quote. Some of the events can now be seen to be part of a coordinated campaign to organize appearances on American campuses likely to incite violent reaction in order to advance a facile narrative that universities are not tolerant of conservative speech. Many commission members are skeptical of these speakers' commitment to anything other than the pursuit of wealth and fame through the instigation of anger, fear, and vengefulness in their hard right constituency. Now, there are some out there, maybe, I don't know, because you have a certain belief, that means you have violence. Ann Coulter instigates violence. That's a reaction to her
Ben
beliefs.
Shapiro always says, look at me. Do I incite violence?
Right.
I'm Ben Shapiro. Just ridiculous. But you know what? We expect this. It's Berkeley.
It is.
Makes you laugh.
The correct answer from Berkeley and this commission would have been simple. There is no excuse for left-wing violence, period. Free speech. Hashtag.
Can you imagine being conservative at this school, though? You've asked every time we interview someone, why did you choose to pay to go to this school?
Yeah. But a conservative like John Yoo graduated, teaches at Berkeley, and he's the one who worked in the Bush administration and came up with enhanced interrogation.
All right, it's 7:11 in New York City, and now Jillian joins us with more from Chicago.
That's right. We are following this breaking story, so let's get right to this Fox News alert. As the search for a gunman intensifies after an ATF agent is shot in the head. It all went down on the south side of Chicago during an undercover operation between the ATF and Chicago police.
I'm coming right at you. I need to escort you to a hospital right now. I'm coming at you. Take me to the hospital. Officer Hicks, we need to escort you to a hospital now. We need an ambulance as soon as possible. Find someone to meet us. He may be hit in the head.
Well, neighbors hearing multiple shots fired. That ATF agent rushed to the hospital is now listed in critical condition. A police officer was also taken to the hospital just to be checked out, but at this point, there's no indication that he was shot. To another Fox News alert, a massive volcano erupts, spewing lava into the air, forcing thousands from their homes. The National Guard working to get people to safety near the Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island. Gray and orange ash seen billowing into the sky from miles away. Kilauea erupting after hundreds of earthquakes shook the island this week. It's one of the most active volcanoes in the world. So look at your headlines and we'll certainly keep you updated on those stories.
All right, Jillian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, 12 minutes after the hour, as negotiations ramp up ahead of the president's historic summit with Kim Jong-un, what makes Mike Pompeo the perfect man for this job? I put a question mark at the end of that. Our next guest is a former CIA station chief, and he'll explain.
Plus, press briefing showdown. Watch this.
I actually didn't use that term.
Well, I said it, but you were blindsided from what you said.
Well, with all due respect, you actually don't know much about me in terms of what I feel and what I don't.
Reporter April Ryan's in the news again. Her outrageous response to that exchange with Kellyanne Conway. Live.
Brand new Secretary of State Mike Pompeo settling for nothing less than North Korea dismantling their entire nuclear arsenal.
So, as negotiations ramp up ahead of President Trump's historic summit with Kim Jong-un, what makes Mike Pompeo the perfect front man on North Korea?
All right, let's get a reaction now from retired CIA Senior Clandestine Services Officer and Vice President of SPG, Daniel Hoffman, who's joining us for the first time as a full-time Fox News contributor, making him eligible for our Christmas party as of today. Daniel, congratulations. Thanks. Welcome aboard. What do you think the profile of Pompeo? Why do you think it's perfect for this mission?
Well, you know, before I retired from CIA last year, I had the privilege of meeting Mike Pompeo, and I can tell you it was a fantastic decision by the president to send Mike on that exceptionally important and challenging mission to North Korea back over Easter weekend when he held that pre-summit meeting with Kim Jong-un. Mike Pompeo understands intelligence by virtue of his time in the Congress and his service as director CIA. Intelligence is really a key component to navigating what are going to be extremely challenging diplomatic negotiations. We've got years of failed policy on North Korea, and now we're looking at trying to solve this. But intelligence is going to be critical to doing it right. Mike Pompeo's got that background that's so important.
You know, and Daniel, we don't know what went on behind the scenes, but North Korea has done a lot since Mike Pompeo left North Korea.
They absolutely have, and they reportedly have moved the 3 Americans who were in labor camps to a hotel in anticipation of releasing them before the summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. I would also highlight, Mike Pompeo was really the president's consigliere, and he is the one who met Kim Jong-un. He's the one who's going to be able to write what essentially is a leadership profile so the president can step out smartly and understand what makes Kim Jong-un tick.
And the State Department's never had so much power in this White House as it does right now.
Agreed.
Meanwhile, Gina Haspel on Tuesday will begin her confirmation process. Some say it's going to be an uphill battle because of her role, if any, in enhanced interrogation. What would it mean for the agency to have someone who has spent decades in the agency lead?
Well, let me just highlight a couple things. First, I served with Gina for many years, and I think very, very highly of her. You were just speaking in your last segment about partisan divide in this country. If there's one thing that intelligence officers from across the political spectrum agree, from John Brennan to Mike Hayden, it's that Gina Haspel should be the next director. I just believe that she's a tremendous professional. She's served in the agency for over 30 years. She understands the art of intelligence. She's done the hard work on the hardest of targets, Russia, has demonstrated outstanding leadership and led the fight on counterterrorism. She's ready to, I think, to address the past issues of enhanced interrogation techniques. Absolutely has no intention of restarting the program, but has learned the lessons.
All right, let's see what happens. Daniel Hoffman, brand new Fox News contributor. Daniel, thank you, and welcome to the family.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, meanwhile, straight ahead.
It is 7:20 here in New York City. Is the online giant Amazon targeting religious freedom groups? The evidence and the woman who is fighting back coming up next.
And he almost got away from police until someone tripped him up. Literally. You're not going to believe this. In fact, someone loved this. All right, time now for News by the Numbers. Hope you up. Glad you dressed. First, 17.7 tons. That's how much ground beef is being recalled because you could be biting in to plastic. JBS USA recalling the meat sold at stores like Kroger and Food for Less. Let's move on and talk about a different story, and I'll begin now. Next to 170,000. That's how many jobs analysts predict the U.S. economy will add and have added last month, making the unemployment rate fall to just 4%. The president tweeted something about this, and here it is. Because jobs in the U.S. are doing so well, Americans receiving unemployment aid is the lowest since 1973. Great. The official jobs report is due out later this morning. We'll cover it. And I have one more story to read, and it revolves around the airlines. 2,800 miles. That's how far JetBlue will fly just to deliver you an authentic New York pizza. From May 9th till the 11th, you can order fresh pies from New York City. There it is, to Los Angeles for less than $20. For Ainsley, it's about 1 block away, because on every block there's a pizza place in New York City, right, Ainsley?
Is it still hot?
Yeah, no. That's why you have a microwave.
Thank you, Brian. All right, is the online retail giant Amazon targeting religious freedom groups? The company removed the Alliance Defending Freedom from their eligible list of charities on Amazon Smile. When customers went to donate, they were told certain categories of organizations are not eligible to participate in Amazon Smile. They say we rely on the Southern Poverty Law Center to determine which charities are in certain ineligible categories. Joining us now to respond from Alliance Defending Freedom is Kristen Wagner. Kristen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So they removed you from Amazon Smile because they say you're a hate group. What's your response?
Well, my response is that when we reflect on yesterday being the National Day of Prayer and President Trump's strong support for free speech and religious freedom, and we compare that with what CEO Jeff Bezos and Amazon is doing right now, it's a polar opposite. Alliance Defending Freedom is a well-respected and successful Supreme Court advocacy group, and the SPLC is essentially a group that's designed to slander other groups, and it's a direct mail marketing scheme designed to pocket millions and millions of dollars offshore. So we're very concerned and appeal to Amazon's sense of fairness and tolerance.
Well, I know they also removed the Family Research Council from the list. What exactly is the Southern Poverty Law Center?
Well, it's a group that has been discredited by not just the right, but those on the left. They do direct mail marketing, and they essentially slander groups that they disagree with. They've publicly stated they are not a neutral watchdog group, but instead only go after those on the right, and their purpose is to destroy groups that disagree with their leftist ideology.
For folks at home that aren't familiar with Amazon Smile, will you explain to them what it is?
Yes, it's an incentive program that Amazon provides to its customers that allow its customers to designate charities to donate some of the proceeds of the sales to. It benefits a number of charitable organizations, and by excluding groups like Alliance Defending Freedom, Amazon needs to realize it's marginalizing not just those of the Christian faith, but those of the Jewish, Islamic, and Catholic faiths who share similar beliefs. We stand for the fundamental freedoms of all Americans, even those we disagree with, and those from all walks of life.
Are there some companies or online companies that are supporting your group where our viewers could shop once they hear this story?
Well, for viewers that want to support us, we'd recommend they go to adflegal.org. And we have done more than any other legal organization to protect and litigate the rights of students on campus, which you discussed earlier, as well as to protect the rights of all Americans to be able to speak and live consistent with who they are. That's tolerance.
Kristen, thanks so much for joining us. We did reach out to Amazon for a comment, and we didn't get a response yet. Did Bill Clinton tell the DNC to keep Bernie Sanders supporters out of power? The shocking claims coming up. And when will we know more about that summit between President Trump and the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un? We're going to ask Kellyanne Conway when she joins us live next.
Sat down right beside me and asked if I was here alone. And I said, yeah, like I was nodding right along to a song on the radio. Girl, how rock tea with Papa gonna roll tea with Papa gonna rock this town, rock it inside out.
I wouldn't really link Brian Setzer with the White House, although he is from Massapequa originally, former stray catter.
Okay. Yeah. And it's some peppy music for this Friday. Right. Kellyanne Conway is linked to the White House. She's standing in front of her right now. She's special counselor to the president. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Kellyanne, I understand you have an expanded role with this administration. That's the story at Axios today. Is that true?
What does it say?
All right, let me find out. Are you worried?
I'm just here to talk about North Korea, China.
I know, but I do like to know if you're going to even be busier than ever before.
Brian says you need a pay raise.
Yeah.
Oh, well, no, that's okay. I don't need a pay raise. I'm happy. I'm happy to be here.
I tell you what.
No, I'm just here. I'm here to serve the president's agenda as counselor of the president. It takes on many different aspects. But I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that report.
Okay, and Brian's
I want to say what go ahead. What really struck me in Axios though was I think it's lost in the shuffle of the fact that NBC News had to correct its bombshell of a report that ended up being a bomb, that there were wiretaps, not so much pen registers, nobody listening to the audio, just taking note of the numbers. And then I noticed at the end of an Axios story this morning that didn't involve me that ABC News had also tweeted out they confirmed the wiretap story and then deleted it and replaced it with a tweet. And Brian Ross is no longer there. So someone else is doing that. But this is just the rush to judgment, the presumptive negativity all of the time, and the lack of coverage of the agenda. Look at the media polls and what Americans are telling media pollsters is important to them versus what the same media actually cover. This president is getting so much done for the American people. Look at what's happening in North Korea. We're on the verge of a summit if the conditions work out and the president is pleased with them. But we're on the verge of a verifiable, irreversible denuclearization of North Korea potentially. Right. Big news.
It is big news. You know, every reporter from time to time gets something wrong. I get that. NBC said they had two sources and apparently...
Anonymous sources.
Right, exactly, and they were wrong.
Their favorite.
But what you said was so important was there's just a rush to judgment. There seems to be, their hair is on fire if they've got new news about Donald Trump that makes them look bad.
But they also don't realize sometimes how easily baited they are. Someone will put something on Twitter and then they presume what it's supposed to say and what it doesn't. You got to work harder than that, folks, respectfully. You're here to report, not react. And I do think in some ways the president has made many people a little soft and sometimes a little bit less active than perhaps they should be in trying to get the story. They're not here to get the president, they're here to get the story. And as the president and press secretary make very clear, he's among the most available, transparent presidents. People say, oh, he doesn't have a formal press conference. This is somebody who speaks out on the South Lawn, who answers questions during pool sprays, even when they're off topic, during bilateral appearances with the heads of other countries. The foreign press is often asking a question that actually relates to the relationship between the two countries. Our press is usually asking a question that doesn't, and the president answers them anyway. So this is a president who's happy to answer questions. He's on Twitter daily. He sent out 3 tweets in a row yesterday, I think clarifying and expanding on the conversation through the first person here, the president, who would know what was happening. But you have to go beyond Twitter. You have to go beyond social media when you're covering this president and really try to report the story. But the rush to judgment, the presumptive negativity has really been, it's been a staple of the way this president's been covered since day one. And this isn't about biased media. This is about incomplete coverage of things people care about. You look at the National Day of Prayer in the Rose Garden yesterday. Thank you so much for having the gentleman on who reformed his life and found Christ and was exalted by the president yesterday, along with the agent who had arrested him originally. That is a story of redemption and mercy and somebody who overcomes. That is the American spirit. This president loves to highlight stories like that in the Rose Garden and elsewise. You had 6 faith leaders representing very different faiths yesterday offering prayer. You had much of the cabinet there, the vice president. Very little coverage of it. But I would commend Americans to just cut out the middleman when they want. Go pull up the clip. Go treat yourself to 38 minutes of the National Day of Prayer yesterday. Really see the beauty of your country in action.
We really only had 4.5 hours of a story that they said that Michael Cohen's had his lines wiretapped, and that was walked back at about 5:30 on MSNBC.
And I want to add one more thing. People do make mistakes, but at the Trump White House, our mistakes live forever, right? And I think those just like and that's the problem here, isn't it? The media protect each other. It's like, oh, well, they've corrected it. They said they were sorry. Excuse me. Even after Saturday night, I told people those who are seeking mercy and instant absolution and forgiveness ought to have demonstrated the capacity to have offered some over the last 16 months.
And I will say this, I got to ask for forgiveness. It's not Axios, it's Playbook that tells you, Kellyanne, you now have an expanded role temporarily, taking a more active role in communication strategy at the White House. Would you say that's true?
What I would say is I'm very happy to help in that regard. And I want to say something about the communication shop here. And the press shop. There are dozens of men and women who work incredibly hard, who are not household names, who aren't part of the public facing of this administration. They are here every day working hard to advance the president's agenda. It's a very intense place to work because the sheer volume and velocity of issues that this president puts forward. He is a man of action and a town of talk and wants to keep disrupting and pushing forward. Look at what he's doing in the international stage domestic agenda. Why is that important? Because this is 2018. And the way that you can communicate with the public through different social media platforms, through different opportunities, is just so much more diverse and so much more plentiful than it's been for any past president. Also, President Donald Trump is very unique and unconventional in that he prefers the democratization of information. He prefers to go directly to the people, tweet out, use Instagram, use Facebook, different social media platforms to connect directly. So I think in 2018, with a media-centric, social media-savvy president and different ways to communicate, we don't need the conventional structure that these other White Houses have had. Our digital team, and Dan Scavino and his social media team, he's like a one-arm paper hanger, that guy. It's unbelievable what he does. They are elevated in this White House because that's the way we're communicating with America. Our director of strategic communications. So we have lots of people. I want to create subject matter experts, people who are on trade, on immigration, on opioids, to come forward and write communications plan and to make sure that press and comms are separate. Press, Sarah and her team, they're worried about next hour, next day. That's their job. Comms, more peeking around the corner the next 6 days, 6 weeks.
Okay, Kellyanne, we want to ask you about April Ryan. She's that White House correspondent. Remember, months ago, she accused Sarah Huckabee Sanders of not really making that pecan pie. They've gone back and forth with different exchanges in the room behind you in the press briefing room. Yesterday, April Ryan was taunting the White House press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, accusing her of playing street politics. Listen to this and we'll get your reaction.
Blindsided. You said yourself you were blindsided.
I actually didn't use that term.
Well, I said it, but you were blindsided from what you said.
Well, with all due respect, you actually don't know much about me in terms of what I feel and what I don't.
What it shows me is that she was feeling that she was in a vice, of sorts. But she went straight to me to say something like, you don't know me. In certain sectors of this nation, people understand what you don't know me means. It's very street, and it leads to a fight, a physical fight. So I'm not there to fight. I'm there to ask questions.
Really? It's a street?
In a vice of sorts? Yeah. And if you say you don't know me, that means you're going to get in a street fight?
April approached me on Sunday at a post-White House correspondent dinner event, and I won't disclose that conversation because I think she meant it to be private, but I will tell you that we try to engage with each other as women to women, people to people. Everybody knows that there's a person behind the positions here on Council of the President. They're in the White House press corps, for example, but people like to have conversations about your family, about your hobbies, things other than, but April is one of many people who approached me, if not Sarah, after that dinner on Saturday night and was not pleased with what had happened at that dinner, and I'm going to leave it at that. The reason I mention that at all is I prefer when these conversations are about information, not confrontation. And I have to pick up for my colleague Sarah Sanders there. Folks, you don't know us, and that's not anything other than a pedestrian term of you don't know us, and you should think about, I think everybody should think about the difference between trying to go viral and start an argument and trying to get information. Your job is to get information, not confrontation.
Right.
And I'll tell you, this has nothing to do with April Ryan. I'm making a more general statement here.
Indeed.
A lot of the folks who dish it out really can't take it. That was my point in a Sunday show a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Be careful if you would be very thin-skinned on the receiving end of the kind of stuff that is on our shoulders like boulders every single day here. Let's dial down the temperature a little bit in the furtherance of information. Sarah goes to that podium every day that she briefs, and she is trying to provide information the best she possesses it, and the best that she knows it at that moment. But things here move so fast that volume and velocity alone, and the press corps will tell you that. They've never seen, people who have worked in comms and press in Democratic and Republican administrations will tell you they've never seen anything like it.
It is something. Just like every time you're on TV, that guy with the leaf blower comes up behind you. He's your friend.
There aren't any leaves here, by the way. I just think he enjoys being with us.
Hello.
Yeah, can I just say...
But how beautiful is the White House?
Right.
Look at this.
It looks beautiful.
But why can't you do it during Outnumbered at noon?
I'll be back.
All right. Kellyanne, thank you very much for joining us.
Take care. Have a great day, great weekend.
You too.
You too. All right, coming up. Who do Democrats want in the White House in 2020? You're looking at her. Take a look. Elizabeth Warren says she's not running, so I don't know if I believe that or not, but she's at top of the list in terms of popular Democrats. Ed Henry on deck to expand.
Janice Dean live at the Kentucky Derby. Today she's the racing machine.
Yes, and we are going to learn how to savor this champagne and also taste the official drink of the Kentucky Oaks. Stay with us. The 144th Kentucky Derby is here on Fox and Friends.
Good Friday morning to you and welcome back. A federal judge is bending over backwards to help 2 illegal immigrants stay in our country by allowing them to get married in her courtroom. Judge Patty Saris of Boston speeding up the legal process so the groom can ride on the bride's asylum application. He's been detained by ICE for more than a year following a DUI arrest. If the wife wins her case in August, the family has a better chance of staying together in the U.S. How about this? A man sticks his leg out to help police nab an armed suspect. Literally. Just watch as the Good Samaritan trips the guy running from the cops outside of a library in Columbus, Ohio. Police say his quick thinking likely saved the suspect's life since they didn't have to fire their guns. No word on why they were chasing him. So look at your headlines. What do you think about that?
Quick thing.
I would like to know what he was doing, what he did.
The long arm of the law.
All right. Meanwhile, the long foot. Meanwhile, she said she's not running for president in 2020, but that hasn't stopped Elizabeth Warren from topping the list of Democratic presidential candidates.
A new poll from Boston Suffolk University shows non-candidate Warren topping the New Hampshire Democratic primary at this stage, jumping ahead of other top Dems. So what does it all mean?
Joining us now with his reaction is Fox News chief national correspondent Ed Henry. Ed, great
Good morning,
to see
guys.
you.
Great to see you. Look, I mean, this shows the left of the left is on top. You have Elizabeth Warren who says she's not running, number one. Joe Biden, kind of left over from 2016, still mulling whether or not to get in, is second. But then you've got Cory Booker there at 8%. And what's interesting is beyond that, the Kamala Harrises of the world are at basically 2%. Now, there's still a long way to go. But as Yogi Berra used to say, it gets late real early around here. People have to start making up their mind. This is one of the best things President Trump has going for him into the midterms as well as 2020, which is Democrats feel like they have this blue wave, but it's the left of the left in some of these House and Senate races in these primaries that are pulling the party further left into the Elizabeth Warren camp rather than trying to appeal to middle
Now, this
America.
is just New Hampshire.
This part is, yeah.
Does it surprise you that Biden is number 2 on this poll?
I think it's name ID early on, obviously, and I think Joe Biden has indicated that maybe he regrets not getting in last time and letting Hillary Clinton kind of, clear the field, if you will, other than Bernie Sanders. And so you've got some leftovers there. And it's unclear whether Biden will run or not. But again, this is something that when you talk early on about, President Trump's in so much trouble, he's not going to. Wait a second. The Democrats can't get their act together, number one. And number two, when poll after poll shows the issue people care about more than anything is the economy, that's one of the president's strongest.
Republicans win on that.
Yeah.
What about the fact that apparently in that new book about Hillary Clinton's campaign, Bill Clinton essentially told the DNC, keep the Bernie people out of it, out of Democratic politics, which makes sense because he's not a Democrat.
Yeah, this is Jonathan Allen, who's a co-author of a couple of bestsellers on various Clinton things, saying that Bill Clinton is still doing that, basically trying to tell party officials, keep the Bernie people out. And as you can see from that poll in New Hampshire, I forgot to mention Bernie pretty strong in there as well. Obviously, he's from Vermont, so that helps him in New Hampshire. But Bernie Sanders is not going away, is the point. And the Clintons don't appear to have learned anything from 2016, which is a kind of rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders. Right. His people are not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. Let the process play out.
Right. I actually agree with Bill Clinton on this. Unless he's going to register in the Democratic Party, you shouldn't put him in a Democratic primary because he gets all the benefits of the operation.
Sure, but they let him in last time. They let him into the debates.
Right.
Even though he was not a Democrat. So it feels like that horse has left the barn.
And he just keeps pulling the party further to the left.
Right, which is where we started.
Bernie would never win because he's too far to the left,
In
right?
a general election.
Exactly.
Well,
He's got a lot of
the
support.
Sanders people argue that just as Donald Trump has this strong base that's with him no matter what, that Bernie Sanders has a strong base on the left no matter what, and you would have a real clash in a general election. But you heard the president back in 2016 saying, I'd love to face Bernie.
Meanwhile, are you going to bring your strong base to Fox and Friends weekend?
I'm going to be here all weekend.
8 hours.
Pete, 8 hours. It's a marathon. You guys have it easy. What is it? 3
hours.
3 hours.
We did blink of an eye.
4 hours a day.
Wow.
And Ainsley and I sort of shared the duties last night at the Donald Towers Foundation.
We did.
A great
Thank
charity. I know you had
you.
Frank Schiller
Didn't
before.
see him.
She had to get her beauty sleep, so I took the second half of the
I
program.
did the first half. He did the second half.
Well, great
Thanks
cause.
for doing
That's
that.
very great that you guys.
All right, good to see you all.
weekend.
I didn't know you had to get up early.
Yeah, that's all right.
So thank you. All right, Janice is going to get the 144th annual Kentucky.
Well, we're sitting here in New York anticipating the Kentucky Derby, but look who's lucky enough to be enjoying all the sights, sounds, and food and drink of Derby week.
I don't recognize her. Oh, that's Janice Dean. She is at Churchill Downs. Hey, Janice.
We are jealous.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I would be jealous of me too, but I'm here at Churchill Downs. And so last night we were at the Taste of the Derby. We got to meet the top chefs with all of the wonderful food. We're also learning that this is the official drink of the Kentucky Oaks, which is happening today. It's the fillies for the Lily, so it's the female horses that are racing. And now I'm a little nervous. We're going to bring Elise in with the official champagne of the Derby.
So we are the preferred champagne of the Kentucky Derby this year. GH Mumm. This is our 4th year participating, and we're so happy to be a part of it.
Elise is going to teach me how to saber champagne. I've never heard the term saber. I have certainly drank my share of champagne, but you're going to teach me how to do this.
Yes, I am. Yes, and it's a lot easier than it looks, I promise you.
Okay, so you're going to step me through this?
Yes, so the first thing you have to do...
Did you have to go to school for this?
I did not have to go to school, but I had some wonderful teachers that were on my team.
Do you ever get afraid?
Every once in a while you can be a little nervous about it, but in terms of the implement, it's a lot easier than it looks.
What is this?
So this is a saber, and they come in a lot of different forms.
Okay.
But this all dates back to Napoleon's time, where they wanted to celebrate on the battlefield after a major victory.
Okay.
So I've prepared the bottle for you. You're holding it perfectly. We're going to aim it right over this way.
Okay, and then just like three.
Keep it nice and flat to the
All right,
bottle here.
right,
And you're
flat
going to
to the
strike
bottle.
it right there.
Straight there.
Give it a nice 1, 2, 3.
Oh my gosh, I've never done this before, but I will be drinking this bottle of champagne.
That's right.
1, 2.
Yes!
Look at that!
You are a natural.
I am a pro at sabering.
A natural already. Love that.
Elise, can I join up? Do you need part-timers?
Absolutely. Yes. Would you like to be a brand
Part-timers.
ambassador with me?
Can you look at this, please?
That's the
And you didn't break
perfect
the
hit.
bottle.
It's a perfect hit.
Awesome. Just like in the movies.
Bottle.
All right.
job.
Jay-
Oh, careful there. No, I'm
Hey,
kidding.
now
I'm just
I'm
kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Kids are watching.
We'll
All
see you
right.
later with more Derby.
All right. Thanks, Elise. Thanks, Janice. Well, NBC walking back a report the president's lawyer, Michael Cohen, was wiretapped. Is the media moving too fast to get a scoop on anything that could be anti-Trump?
Geraldo Rivera's here, and if I can get him to weigh in on this, it'll be great.